many fans you were in this year.
Hello and welcome back to coverage of the PDGA Euro Tour. This is the first stop at Pro Forester in Varazdin, Croatia, a technical and demanding course with tricky conditions. Excited to see the best in the world and Europe battle it out here on this stage. This is MPO Round 2 Back 9 lead card coverage brought to you by MDG Media. I'm Connor Wood, and with me, Elias Luukkonen.
Hello guys, nice to be here looking at this exciting back nine after many of these players pretty much tore apart the front nine, especially Paul going 6 under in the front. That's a course record pace, and the other guys also on very good scores after 9.
Even with some bogeys, still managing to absolutely shred. We start off the back 9 here on hole 10, a 254 meter par 4. You have this large tree to contend with about 20 to 30 meters off the tee. A lot of players choosing to shape an Anheuser backhand around it to fight towards this second tree on the right side. You do have some hazard islands about 150 to 160 meters both on the right and the left as you then want to fight your way. This is actually the FPO basket that the drone is flying towards. For MPO, it's tucked away behind the tree in the top right of your frame, adding a little bit extra element of difficulty. This is a hole which you can quickly find trouble, but if you have the distance, still a manageable birdie.
Yeah, off the drive, really the most important thing is getting it slightly to the right and getting a lot of distance. Paul seems to be getting a lot of distance on this one. Just crashing into the small hillside in the slightly after the halfway point of the fairway. He'll maybe have difficult footing from there, but the position is pretty good. And Jakub going with something more overstable on a steep Anheuser angle. He's on the left side of the fairway. And from there he will have to throw a higher shot because he has the hillside to contend with, but it's still a chance to get to the basket from there.
And depending on the landing zone of the tee shot, you can play to the left or the right of those second guardian trees. We see Luke really trusting the disc here, going super high turnover as he fades out as well. Anything near that small solar panel is an indicator of a great shot, but he actually pushes it into the hazard zone, I believe, about 5 meters shorter, and he is in a perfect spot.
Yeah, that was a crush. The hazard zone is almost not reachable for the majority of the players. Keiro looking at the same line, but I believe stays just short of the hazard, and that's the ideal shot. He will have just a straight 120 meters from there to the basket. Jakub having to contend with those trees, but manages to get through pretty well and stays in bounds. Not going to the river, and he will have a long circle 2 look to the basket.
So you see Keiro now with a long look, probably still about 130 to the pin, shaping a hyzer on that right side. Looks as if it was caught up a little bit, doesn't get the full flight. Still playing for par though, no worries. Paul now looking to attack, swinging a big hyzer. The majority of the day this had a right to left wind, meaning that the hyzer got that little bit extra fighting push as well as width away from the river. Paul finds the last guardian tree and will be tucked right behind it.
That's a great guardian tree in a sense that it collects a majority of these shots that are fading out early. Luke seems to be going towards the same tree, but just barely goes through the branches. And he will have an inside the circle look to save his par after one extra stroke from the hazard. You guys can see there was some gallery following this lead card. I'm sure the fact that the 6-time world champ Paul McBeth is here is really interesting to the locals as well. Keiro throws a good approach from there. Gonna have a stress-free par.
So we see Jakub from just the river's edge gives it a healthy bid and sits it down very close. A nice floaty attempt to ensure he doesn't go long, but gave it the height. Paul with the straddler. An awkward stance, hangs onto it a bit too long in his hand as he hits the top of the basket.
Able to find an awkward stance even on one of the most open holes on the course. And Luke there also having to go with the straddle and gets his par putt in with good confidence. I'm sure he's happy about that after the hazard drive.
And I'd say his drive was still even a great one, probably 1 meter too long of what he wants, so the margin of error very tight there as Keiro finds his par as well.
Yeah, it's for these long throwing players, it's not a very difficult hole to get the par or even have a chance for the birdie. But being inside the circle for the birdie definitely requires a couple of long and accurate shots. So it's not a very commonly birdied hole, even though many of these players are walking away with an easy par.
And then they walk back towards the woods here on hole 11, a 113-meter par 3 that is a pretty pure tunnel shot the entire way. You have some initial gaps to hit about 20 meters off the tee that are very important if you want any look at birdie. As you want to lean on some understability to ensure a long straight flight, you'll try to penetrate all the way up the tunnel, avoiding these trees, and find yourself at this green. Pretty open if you're in circle 1, but some trees definitely in your way if you're circle 2 or beyond.
This hole is starting the wooded section of the course, and some of the common things on many of these holes, as on this hole as well, is the low ceiling and the tight gaps. For example, Paul going way too high there, hitting some foliage. Really important on this hole, and pretty much every hole after this, is to keep the disc low. You want it to be level to the ground with a lot of speed going forward to still get the distance.
I think the highs are release shaping most naturally through the gap. You want it to flip up to flat. Even Jakub here, a touch of nose up, fades out early, but just within the circle, a good throw to give himself a birdie look. You really want a forwards pushing flight the whole way. Not much fade is desired or required.
Yeah, most of these players are going to be going for a fairway driver on this hole, even though the distance would suggest that it might be reachable with a mid-range. Luke there, keeping his disc almost perfectly straight, just tailing out at the end. He's on the edge of the circle, that's a good shot. And Keiro also targeting the right side, unfortunately hitting one of the largest trees on the course and kicking into a bad rough. You can just see how difficult it is if you go into the rough on this hole, even though this hole does not have the most difficult rough on the course, but still Keiro able to only pitch it up a little bit forwards and to the fairway.
Paul here, going for the skip shot, still attacking the basket, and again leaning on a driver on a short shot, showing his touch there, control of the speed.
Keiro, good stroke from long circle to nose up spinny run, but unfortunately just high. Let's see if Jakub is putting slightly downhill, just bangs it in the middle. That was a great putt.
Always a great pace and spin on his putts. Nothing different there.
This is actually one of the more open greens on the wooded section of the course, so you can see these players, Luke getting the good birdie putt in the basket, but you can see there's little to no obstacles on this hole inside the circle.
Which is rare. It can be a bit of a sigh of relief. You can feel good about having a long look at this one. Mostly unobstructed. Paul here for his par.
That's a solid par putt there. And Keiro, unfortunately, looking to tap in the bogey on this hole. It's one of the easier holes on the back nine. Many players are looking to birdie this hole, and bogey on this one really hurts, but let's see if Keiro can keep his head up and maybe birdie the next one.
And you see that next one here. Hole 12 is a 106-meter par 3 with two small gaps to hit off the tee. The fairway then opens up to be significantly wider. A lot of players with the backhand will be pushing this right side tree line or turning something over softly through the gap as it plays slightly uphill, probably requires about 110 or 115 of power to park it, but really just a straight shot. You can throw backhand, forehand, mid-range, fairway, whatever you please.
This is also definitely one of the birdieable holes on the back nine, as we see Jakub going with the perfectly straight shot into the bullseye, almost acing the hole, just sliding to 5 meters. That's a great angle control and height control. This hole is one of the rare holes on the course that is actually averaging under par, just barely by 0.04 strokes. So you can see it's a really difficult course, and Luke getting it just inside the circle there with a good bit of turn. Paul heading towards the right side trees, which are very thick, and we'll have to see whether he has a look or not from there.
You see Keiro now on the tee, also looking like a mid-range for him. As he gets this one pushing flat, begins to fade a touch early, he will still remain within the circle and have a 9-meter putt for his birdie. Only Paul now with an obstructed look on the second. It's worth mentioning that 12, 13, and 14 in the rains became very muddy, very wet, with the weeks of rain accumulating. He has a look.
Just barely missing it to the low cage. That's a great run from almost 20 meters. Keiro with a confident stroke uphill, exactly 10 meters. That's a great one to get after, especially after the bogey on the last hole.
And very fun to see a breakout performance from some new players, especially on coverage with some high caliber players. Jakub making sure to put that one in for birdie as well. A great shot off the tee, almost acing it. Good to still secure the birdie.
Yep, and Luke looking to do the same. He was actually closer than I thought, just outside the bullseye. Good birdie there. And one thing to mention as well as we enter the woods here, there are many mosquitoes on these holes. No matter whether it's a 3-meter putt or a 10-meter putt, you're not going to be putting without any distraction because mosquitoes are going to be eating you pretty much alive.
They buzz by the ears, they land on the hands, really requiring a good mental focus. As we move here to hole 13, a demanding and tricky hole. This par 4 sits at 195 meters. You have the initial gap and tree to beat. A really good shot will crest this hill, dividing the fairway in half. A good shot will still be just before it, allowing you to battle as far as you can up the fairway on your second shot. If you can beat this horizontal fallen tree, basket tucked away up on the hill to the right. This requires 2 incredibly precise and aggressive shots to birdie. A 4 is a great score, and I think that this is one where if you can walk away without any damage done, you're happy.
Yeah, exactly, and as we see a train pass on the right side of the fairway, this is the most difficult hole on the course, averaging 0.84 strokes above par, and really important off the drive here, keeping it low, as it seems like Jakub has thrown the perfect shot off the drive, going way over the hill, and he's only got maybe around 75 meters to the basket from there. That's one of the best shots I've seen on this hole.
That is the best shot I've ever seen on this hole. Incredible by Jakub to get us started. Luke playing the high anhyzer left of the initial tree, flexes it also over the hill. These guys really with some fantastic tee shots. Very rare you see one, not even 2 players get over the hill on the first.
Wow, I'm really surprised with Luke's decision to go off over the left side, but that was a great shot. It certainly works. Looks like Paul is actually going for the same line here.
Getting that long turnover flight. It is a larger gap on the left initially, but gets very tight as you try to break over the hill, and Paul is even further off the tee. You can see all 3 of those guys cut from the cloth of champions as they are fighting on an incredibly difficult hole to still position themselves for birdie. Keiro, with a much more traditional looking result from a majority of the field, catches some trees, will have a 3rd shot to the green to try and save his par.
And Keiro with still a decent result after 2 shots, having a chance to get the par on this hole. Not many players even have the chance of getting the par after hitting some trees off the first and the second shot. We just saw 3 insanely good drives on this one, and Luke with a decent approach. The approach is quite a simple forehand for these players. If you can just get around the bush, and Paul just with the perfect, goes with an overstable driver there, inside and low, gets a good skip up the hill, and he's just outside the bullseye there.
Jakub looking to shape a similar shot now. Height really important as he hugs the inside the whole way. A little bit too straight, but will have a look back towards the basket. There's just so many things blocking your entrance to the green between the branches on the left over the log itself, the very tight rough on the right side. as we see Keiro also battle through into the circle. These guys with an incredible performance on what is the most difficult hole on this course.
Yeah, certainly. It's very rare to see even one birdie on this hole, let alone 3 chances for it. Luke, unfortunately, just leaving it low. And Jakub from the bushes, he looks to be having some sort of a good window and bangs it in the middle. That's a great birdie and a great scramble putt. I'm sure we'll see more of those during this back 9.
And check out Jakub's scorecard, putting together 3 in a row now. Keiro with a good-looking putt that just slips out the right side. Heavy chains there, not too high either, but a touch wide. He'll have a tap-in bogey, and Paul with the tap-in birdie. Stress-free 3 is an incredible result here.
Yeah, you're really gaining strokes on the field, and usually on the card, although in this case not that many. So 2 great birdies there, and a par and a bogey.
On the horizon, dawn is breaking, a brand new day. The best kept secrets of the Croatian Adriatic are waiting to be discovered.
We move forwards to hole 14, a 158-meter par 4. This is another hole that is attackable but still requires a great precision and keeping it on the fairway. You have a straight to leftwards fading shot off the tee. A great shot will end right about here, leaving you roughly 70 still to the pin through a tightly wooded tunnel shot. You see, if you fade just a touch early on your approach, you can find extremely thick rough as the basket is once again tucked away to the left side. It's almost kind of the same shot twice here. You need to push forwards about 70 meters, fade just at the end to maybe 80, and try to do that again, avoiding all the trees and rough.
Very true, and off the tee, even though it might look like a hyzer shot, just a straight shot will do, unless you're looking for more distance. And Jakub is throwing more of a hyzer shot, and you can see he's almost to the left side rough. Many players are looking forward to throwing a bit of a straighter disc here to get that forward push instead of the left finish. Paul with just the perfect shot on the right side of the fairway is ideal since you have a straighter look at the tunnel from there. And he's got a long drive there. He only got about 60 to 65 meters left to the basket.
Paul throwing his Athena there. We'll see Luke, a similar shape to Jakub as he's trying to fight before those trees. Kisses the branches, but full flight and a great result as well. On the left side of the fairway, he'll be a bit pinched, blind of the basket most likely, but still a good position.
And Keiro as well, going with a hyzer release. A little bit of an overstable disc going towards the left side. Unfortunately, just inside the left side rough, but he might have a lean out forehand from there. And you can see this group of trees on the left side of the fairway is really the problem with driving it to the left side. Jakub having to go with a fast driver shot just to get around those trees, and unfortunately catches the last group of trees on the right side of the basket.
And I know Jakub really leaning on his harps here in the back 9, has a great touch on them, I believe cycling them for various stabilities. We see Luke now with those trees exactly in his line. He's shaping a soft flex to beat the rough, but catches a big branch there and looks like he brought it down even.
Yeah, looks like he wasn't too happy with the branch there. Paul in the perfect spot, throwing not an ideal approach actually. I was expecting him to get it much closer than that, but he will have a look from edge of the circle. And great scramble there from Luke.
I think Paul's shot looked quite good, but just got an unfortunate result on the ground connection. Didn't get that forwards to leftwards finishing flare I think he expected.
Yeah, it's a very soft ground on this course. Not very many big skips here, but I'm sure he certainly expected some bit of skip there. And Jakub in the middle of the bush almost makes it in. And that's a very thick bush. I'm surprised he even had a look.
Paul also with a look, but a very awkward stroke there on his putt, as well as an awkward stance. Fires it over the top. He'll be bringing this one back now for par.
I'm sure he's a little bit disappointed there with the par after the picture-perfect drive that he threw off the tee. It's also one of the more birdieable holes on the course, since it's not very long and the fairway is, well, relatively wide by the standards of this course.
You could actually see on that previous camera angle the mosquitoes flying in front of the lens. Very thick here on 14. You don't want to take too much time on anything. There you see them buzzing around. Luke now.
Yeah, most of these players are likely to be drowning in mosquito spray right now, at least hopefully to maybe give them a little bit more time to focus before the mosquitoes come to land and eat them.
Often a pungent back nine for most cards. As we move on to hole 15, par 4, only 134 meters, but very demanding on the shape. As players will need to break through the first tunnel and then fade left. That gives you an entrance to the second leg of the fairway, where you can shape and weave your shot of choice through all of these trees to a well-guarded green slightly tucked away, also sloping softly downhill. Very easy to run it long on the second, especially given the short distance of this par 4, but you want to keep it close as there are woods left, right and long of the basket, anywhere about more than 5 meters.
And you can see just how tight the initial tunnel of the tee is. It's really, you don't need much distance here. Most players are likely to going with a slow disc, either a putter or mid-range, just trying to throw it straight with a left finish. Jakub had a good shape, but unfortunately just catching the left side of the tunnel. That's a common result. It's a really tight tunnel, and if you're pushing too straight off the tee shots, there is also many trees to catch, so the line that you have to throw is very precise. Paul looks to be going with a very low shot, trying to hyzer it just before those trees, and that is the ideal landing zone. He will have a forehand look to the basket from there. Only about 60 meters left.
Perhaps a soft flex. I don't think he can go full hyzer on the forehand. The further left on the fairway you get, you do need to play around some of those extra trees, but a fantastic shot regardless. Luke also really nicely shaping this first tunnel, but he will skip too much. Shows the danger of throwing a higher speed disc here. You want to try and control that final fade. He'll still have a chance to birdie, but it will be tricky, no doubt.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason why on this hole many players are going for either a slower disc or trying to throw something straighter with a little bit of a hyzer to flip up just to avoid the skip at the end. But we'll see what Jakub actually has from here. Looks like he's on the edge of the fairway and still has a look to the basket, but this forehand is extremely demanding as it has to be kept super low, needing to miss the trees in the middle. This looks just perfect. Unfortunately, the very muddy ground doesn't give him much of a skip, but he's just barely inside the circle. That's an incredible shot from where he was.
I'm not sure he could have thrown it better, shaping the ceiling and the fairway to perfection with the overstable forehand. He will be left with a birdie putt from a tough spot. Keiro now looking to scramble as well. Just catching the back of those trees did not get much distance, as he'll be left with about 60 now to the pin through the right side of this second fairway. There's a lot of different gaps to choose between as he shapes a soft forehand flex, gives it a run even, and fires it long. Great display of his touch and control there.
Yeah, looks like Paul has just a routine shot to the basket, just about 50 to 60 meters left, going with a slow disc forehand and skipping under the basket to about 5 meters. That was an incredible drive for sure.
And he did just have the pure hyzer, just perfect placement, even 1 or 2 meters left of where he was. And you see Luke exactly in that position, just left off the fairway of where Paul was, trying to shape a forehand flex as well. He battles his way up far enough to give himself a putt. I think to be putting for birdie, given his position off the tee, is a very good result. I think he'll be all right with that.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. And looks like he has to contend with this small tree, and even having to put it either flat or with a slight anhyzer. Just barely missing the basket, and hopefully doesn't slide too far, because as we mentioned, the backside of the green is super tight and filled with small trees.
Jakub for his birdie there. Unfortunately, a slightly early release will find the left side of the cage and go long. As he is now coming back, you can see just 5 meters long, and you have an awkward putting stroke between all the branches. He finds chains, but left side, and falls out.
You can just see how tight the long side of the basket is. There's so many little trees that you have to contend with. They're kind of crossing the air in different ways, so that sometimes you have to put the disc on a weird angle to get through them. Luke, fortunately, not having to deal with them too bad, puts it in the middle.
Solid scramble, as we'll see Paul here for his birdie. Fortunate to have an open look, no weird angles required. Puts that one in.
Yeah, that was just a perfect play on this hole by Paul. Couldn't really have done it much better. And Keiro here, looking to tap it in. Even these bullseye or just outside the bullseye putts are not insanely easy with all the mosquitoes and the obstacles on the green.
Jakub taps in a bogey, some woes on the putting green. Keiro and Luke with the par. Paul securing the lone birdie on this lead card. Here we are on hole 16, a 98-meter par 3 with a precise gap that you do need to hit right between these two trees here. Anything that goes to left side rough will leave you with many obstacles and not a real look to the basket. You then need your disc to fade or skip to the left, maybe even stall out. This one's really about good speed control and ensuring that your hyzer angle integrity remains throughout the flight.
Yeah, it's a very specific shot that you have to throw. If you go even 5 meters long of the hyzer, ideal hyzer timing, then you're probably not getting to the basket. Looks like Paul pulls it a bit to the right, but still able to hit the fairway just perfectly. He's inside the circle there. Maybe that was actually probably intentional. I think he's going for the wider hyzer route and trying to already hyzer through the gap.
Now, I'll be honest, I'm taking some notes from that throw.
That seems like a good idea. Luke with a more overstable disc, trying to fire it through the gap and then fade, and that's also just the perfect shot. Very rare to see 2 shots on this hole in a row that enter the circle.
And Luke going for the more traditional line that pushes forwards and then dumps left, whereas Paul threw the fighting hyzer the whole way. We will see Keiro. Low release, he does not like it as it connects to the ground early and fades out. He will be in that thick cluster of trees, a lot of players choosing even to go overhead from that rough, as there are no gaps big enough for your disc horizontally.
Yeah, it's really the inside left rough on this hole that's the worst. If you're going too straight and right, you will almost every time be able to get the par, but the left side rough is really tough. Jakub with a fast shot with an overstable disc, and that's just picture perfect. Almost leaning on the basket, just inside the ring of the bottom of the basket. That's a great shot there.
As we see Keiro now, actually very fortunate to not be inside those trees. Close enough to the outside that he can straddle an Anheuser forehand. Gives it a floaty bid, and a good shot there to keep himself par.
Showing off that Estonian forehand touch that we see on almost every Estonian player. Luke there puts it in the heart for the birdie. He looks pretty comfortable on this back nine.
Absolutely, getting his 3rd birdie of the back 9, still bogey free here, avoiding trouble, scrambling well, throwing great. He's putting it together now, as we see Paul from about 6 meters for his birdie as well. Really nice shot with a slightly wider hyzer, less traditional line, but made it work.
And all of a sudden, Paul is actually 9 under for this round. Still has a chance to even push the course record that he set at 10 under during round 1.
As we see Jakub walk up, smile on his face, tap in his birdie.
That's a great score. Having 3 birdies on that hole is extremely rare in any card.
And they move on here to hole 17. Beautifully framed basket. This is an 82-meter par 3 tunnel shot the entire way. series of trees that you need to beat, as well as the low ceiling. It may look like a putter distance for a lot of these guys, but a lot of players will opt to disc up to likely a mid-range to try and push the distance under the branches more risk-free.
Yeah, the ceiling on this hole, even though it doesn't look extremely low, you only have, at the end of the fairway, you only have about 3 meters of ceiling to work with. And this is also one of the tightest gaps on the course. You really just have to keep it dead straight the whole way. You don't have almost any room.
And this is the slickest tee pad on the course. Paul slipped in round 1. He slipped again here in round 2. I've slipped on this tee more than once. Very understandable. It's muddy, it's wet, it's slick. And as the tournament goes on, given the rains every day, it is absolutely still a battle here to find some clean footing.
Yeah, some players even opting to not throw at the front edge of the tee pad, but rather throwing from a little bit further back. As Luke doesn't hit the fairway, but fights through the entire right side of the fairway. That's an incredible result with the shot he threw. You very rarely see any disc going through those trees.
Actually going long of the basket, completing its flight. We'll see Jakub now.
Let's see if he can handle the footing on this one. Looks like he does, and throws just a perfect looking shot there into the bullseye. That was incredible. Going with something pretty overstable actually, hitting it towards the right side of the fairway and fading to the basket.
I think maybe a harp again for Jakub.
Might be. And Keiro going with the touch forehand with a slow disc. That's an incredible shot as well. Able to keep it straight for most of the flight and just tailing off at the end.
Some really smooth stuff. We see Paul from the right side. A soft backhand bid. Slides it up there into the bullseye. He'll be taking a 3 stress-free. I think, although this is one you want to birdie, given how far he's pushed his lead now, he'll be comfortable taking a 3 here.
Yeah, that's for sure. And still one hole to go to get the birdie. Luke, unfortunately, just too far left of the putt. That would have been an incredible birdie with the good break he got. And Keiro looking to put it in the middle. Very confident stroke. Low in the middle, just above the cage. I'm sure he's happy to get that birdie after a slightly difficult back 9.
And although the front 9 has the easiest and the hardest holes, I find the back 9 harder to keep a rhythm on, given how much woods and rough there is. It's very frequent that you end up scrambling on a lot of these holes, so it's difficult to really find that pace and keep the momentum.
That's very true, and especially with all the mosquitoes and the tight gaps, you really need some strong nerves to stay on the fairway on the back 9.
And we close it out here on hole 18, a 95-meter par 3 with an initial tunnel. You need to hit this gap right here, this big tree on the left, an absolute disc magnet. If you can avoid that one, you break into this open field where you can get a full flight and try to fight your way up to this green. You have a slightly elevated basket to end things out. Once again, really testing your nerves and seeing where your putt is at the end of a long round, many rounds being 4 to 5.5 hours to complete.
Yeah, it's certainly a long, demanding course. Maybe not distance-wise, but definitely time-wise. And on this last hole, many players are looking to hit a fairway driver since the ceiling is so low, just to the gap. And unfortunately, Jakub just missing it to the right. It's very common to miss this gap. It's actually one of the tightest gaps on the entire course. Keiro going with the common forehand here, which is good to keep the disc lower, since forehand keeps the nose up a bit better. And the shape is also pretty good for the forehand, since the basket is tucked just slightly to the right.
And he's shaping that soft flex, getting a slight turnover, complete fade. That basket isn't elevated. He may be finding some metal there as he skips long of it. A beautiful shot by Keiro to round out his tee shots here on 18.
Yeah, we saw on the last hole on this one a couple of incredible forehands from him. You can really see the touch he's got. And Paul going with the same shot, trying to keep it low. Unfortunately, just hitting the last tree of the gap, and He's not gonna have a chance for birdie, but that's a pretty easy par for him.
I think likely a jump putt approach. As we see Luke now on the tee. Also opting for the backhand. Getting this one turning through the gap important as it ends softly to the right, and he's done that great as he slides up right outside bullseye.
That's a great shot, and you can see he pretty much threw a dead straight shot, so the finish to the right is really not very significant, even with a straight backhand able to be only 5 meters away. Jakub going with the super high forehand, finishing just slightly outside the bullseye. He's gonna have a putt from there to finish his round into a good score.
Paul looking like he wanted to give that a bid. I think maybe aware of the fact he shot 10 under in round 1. He's sitting at 9 under. That would have been to match his course record. Jakub right in the heart to secure his par. Nicely done and a good round from him to go, I believe, 6 under for the round.
Yeah, either 6 under, might have
Even 8.
even 8 under, I think. And Keiro there, after a difficult back 9, getting 2 birdies in a row and a decent 3 under. That's certainly not a bad round on this course.
And Luke now for his birdie. To end strong, he does find that one, leaving him 5 under for the round and 13 under overall. Some incredible performances by our lead card. Paul tapping it in for par, sitting at 9 under in this second round. Pace of a champion as he is still retaining that solo lead position.
Yeah, you can see he really gained more lead over the field during this round, and looking forward to entering the final round with a good cushion of 5 strokes over the field.
An exciting battle shaping up here. As we see the standings, Paul McBeth solo lead at 19 under, Jakub at 14 under, Luke in third at 13 under, 3 players tied for fourth, Scott, Silver, and Keiro at 11. The battle will continue. We hope you enjoyed this exciting coverage in Varazdin, Croatia. We appreciate all of the support, and we are happy to be bringing you round 3 tomorrow.
See you guys in the final round, and thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the good YouTube stuff to support us, and we'll see you there.